Hello everyone, welcome back to the third part of my A to Z. My voice! Hello everyone, and welcome back to the third part of my A to Z reading challenge. We have covered 13 books so far. We are halfway through the challenge. If you haven't seen the first two videos in this series, I have been going through and reading one book corresponding to each letter of the alphabet, A, B, C, all the way through to currently. We finished off with M last time, and we're starting with N this time. And in this video, we will be covering 7 more books, which will take us up to T. Then after that will be the final 6 books, and we can wrap this up. But for now, I am here to talk about our book for N, which is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, one of my absolute favourite authors, of course. She wrote the Grishaverse, and yeah, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are my favourite books ever. So, you know, to dip my toe into a new world from her, I was kind of nervous because, like, what if I don't like it? I'm halfway through currently, so I'm just doing my, midway check-in. And, I was a bit nervous about finally getting around to this. I had heard really good things about it. This is the first adult novel that she wrote. It's like an adult dark academia murder mystery, I think would be the best way of describing it, at least thus far. And yeah, I did read The Familiar by her recently, which was like her latest adult novel, which I really, really loved, which made me a bit less nervous about checking this out. Because there's a sequel called Hellbent. I think there is a third book that's been written. It's not out yet. I don't know if this is going to be a trilogy or a longer series than that. Who knows? But there's going to be at least 3. And this kicked off the series, I think in 2019 this came out. So yeah, this follows Alex Stern. Her full name is Galaxy Stern, which is hilarious. And basically she was recruited after a very traumatic incident that we haven't properly delved into yet, but I'm sure will be really explained in the rest of this book or future books, I assume. But yeah, she's kind of recruited to attend Yale University. She's kind of just given like a scholarship to attend because of elements of her past and abilities that she has. She can see ghosts. They call them greys in this world. It's very much set in the world as we know it, but with a fantasy element added in. So at Yale, they have lots of secret societies and lots of societies in general. And there are 8 of them that kind of study different aspects of magic. One that's a particular highlight to me is like they study like transformation, like putting a human soul into like an animal form and like maintaining your soul in animal form and then transforming back, stuff like that, which I think is an interesting thing. And as I'm reading this, they've just kind of delved into that particular, society. But there's 8 of them that kind of, specialize in different things secretly. They'll do like rituals and stuff like that. And Alex joins the Ninth House, who are kind of in charge of watching over the other 8 houses and making sure, they follow the rules and things don't go wrong. So if a house is like performing a ritual or something, which they tend to do, on Thursday nights is their night of choice, members of the Ninth House will go along and make sure things go in smoothly and make sure that ghosts don't kind of interfere or, get involved or any of that kind of thing. So Alex gets involved in that. Mainly because she has the ability to just see ghosts. Most people just have to like take a potion or something to be able to see them, which can hurt them. But Alex can just naturally see them, for better or worse, because there's a very traumatic incident that she has involving a ghost when she was younger. That to me felt a bit like, yeah, that's right, this is an adult novel, so I'm going to do this for the backstory, rather than feel like it's actually needed. So maybe that will come back into play, maybe not, but it did feel a bit like, oh shit, okay, that was a bit uncomfortable. So, maybe some trigger warnings I would recommend you maybe researching if this appeals to you. But yeah, that's the general setup. And there is a girl found dead on campus. and Alex begins to suspect that it's actually related. It didn't appear to be at first, but now she thinks it might be tied to one of or many of the societies that she kind of watches over, and things will go from there. And her mentor, who's kind of, was showing her the ropes when she first arrived, called Darlington, who might be my favourite character so far. We also get his point of view. It's mainly from Alex's point of view, but there are chapters set in the past that come from his point of view. He's gone missing. We find out very early on that he's in present day. He's gone missing. Something's happened, and I think in time we're going to find out what went down and what went wrong to lead to his disappearance. So yeah, when there's flashbacks, it's his point of view, but for the most part in present day we are going through this journey with Alex. So yeah, there's that going on, and some of the ghosts have started behaving a bit weirdly, some of the greys as they're called. So all these different things that kind of started really going a bit weird and askew against the natural order of things when Alex first turned up. So is that related? Is it not? There's lots of different mysteries on the go, but it very much is like a murder mystery at its heart. I think that's like the main mystery that's being the focus here, which I wasn't expecting, but I quite like it. And yeah, I'm loving this. I'm really, really enjoying it. I think I'm enjoying the world more than I'm enjoying the characters thus far. So it's kind of flipping the Grishaverse on its head a bit, where I think I loved the characters a lot more than the world. But yeah, I think this is very much more grounded than the Grishaverse, because it is just set in the world as we know it, with like secret fantasy elements to most people, I think. So it's not high fantasy by any stretch of the imagination. It's definitely the dark academia sort of vibe. But these things are kind of present, and it also leans into, I guess, different like creation myths, different religious beliefs on death and life and God. It kind of draws aspects from all of those, and presents it a way of like everyone's sort of right and everyone's sort of wrong. It's a really interesting kind of way they delve into that. So I really like the ancient Egyptian mythology and their beliefs and stuff, and they lean into that at parts of this, so I'm really enjoying that. And I think the mysteries are really intriguing, and I'm excited to carry on with that and see what developments come, what revelations come, because I really don't know how it's all connecting yet, but I feel like we're starting to gain some real momentum with that. I think the world building's been great. Leigh Bardugo, this is ironically enough, it's my 9th book from her that I've read, and she's one of my favourite authors. I think she just, as it turns out, based on this so far as well, she can do no wrong for me, really. She's definitely an author who won't dump all this exposition on you at the start. Certainly not nowadays. Maybe the first Shadow and Bone book kind of could be accused of that, but certainly not now. She really lets you sit in the world and just work things out for yourself, and lets things get revealed as time goes on. So in a way, it feels more of like a slow burn to get into this. I think The Familiar was very much the same. But eventually you just get a sense of the world, and it's not like info dumped at the start, which, it's very organically shown to you, I think, the world building in, her later books particularly. Whereas a lot of fantasy books, I think, and stuff like this would just dump all that lore on you right at the start, and you're like, oh god, that's a bit too much. She really drip feeds it too nicely, I think. So it does make, I think, the opening few chapters quite confusing and maybe difficult to follow, but all does become clear, at least it did for me. And we're really into the swing of things now. I think this is kind of flying by. It's like 450 pages, and definitely in the last couple of books in the Grishaverse, I would say she went on a bit too long, and those books got a bit too long. But I think the pacing on this is really good so far. And I think these first 220 or so pages have flown by. Hopefully that will kind of keep up with the second half. But yeah, I'm just really intrigued by the mystery. I think Alex as a main character is serviceable and fine. I don't think she's, I'm not like super attached to her or anything. She has gone through some shit, which is awful. I think her camaraderie with Darlington, like her mentor that we see in the flashbacks, I'm really liking that. So I would say, Alex and Darlington are kind of the standout characters. I think everyone else is kind of like, yeah, they're fine at the minute. So this is definitely one where I think the plot and the world is more interesting to me than the characters so far. But, it's the first book in the new series. Anything can happen in the second half and beyond. So yeah, wondering what happened to Darlington, considering I think he's probably my favourite at this point, is, really intriguing to me. So we'll see if that has a resolution. Because I know there's more books, I'm expecting like a big cliffhanger ending and to maybe not get all the answers. So I think that's also going to help maybe when we get to the end. But so far, I think it's, even though it is still 450 pages, I think the pacing's been brilliant with this. I love how slowly the world's unravelled, and just learning new bits and pieces about life at this university and Alex's past. And yeah, just the mystery of what's happened to this girl who's been killed in present day. I think the addition of like the ghosts or the greys is really fun as well. I like slowly learning about all the different societies that the ninth house is watching over, because a lot of chapters will end with like an extract of a textbook, like that's come from this universe, an in-universe textbook that just kind of explains a bit about one of the societies, and then the next chapter will normally be Alex spending time in that society, so it kind of like sets you up to like, this is what these guys are like, this is their whole deal, so you're not like too lost when you jump into a chapter featuring them, which I think is a really nice touch as well. And it really just helps split up the book a bit. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this so far. I think it's a very interesting, mysteries, really, not just a mystery. I'm really liking the murder mystery angle. I'm really intrigued by, the mysterious past, multiple mysterious pasts, I guess, in regards to Alex, like her time before she came to Yale, and, what happened with Darlington and everything. So yeah, I'm really, really intrigued. I'm really liking this. And I think we're on track to have this be something that might be one of my favourites of this challenge so far. We're off to a very strong start with this video, which is great. But I feel like we've always started off pretty strong with some of these. I'm trying to think what the first book in the last video was. Hogfather, which was great as well. So I think this is probably on track to be a 4.5, maybe even a 5 if it keeps this up. I'm just really, really loving it. And yeah, the one thing that I do want a bit more from is I want to really, really connect with more than just one character. But there's not that many characters properly involved in this yet, so we'll see where that goes. And again, that might be something that just comes from books further along in the series. But as far as I can tell, I'm going to really, really love this. I think I'm almost certainly going to carry on in this series. I do actually currently own the second book, so I can jump straight into the sequel if I wanted to. I think I probably will continue because this is really, really good and really intriguing. But I just love Leigh Bardugo's writing. If you've read Leigh Bardugo before, and particularly I think more her later stuff, because I think because the first Shadow and Bone trilogy is in first person, and I think she really shines when she does third person. I don't think first person is well suited to her necessarily. I think she's great at multiple POVs and being properly inside people's heads, not just one person. I think it allows her to, it really complements, I think, her style of like slowly building the world out by having multiple POVs. So I think that's kind of, she's hit her stride discovering that for the Six of Crows duology onwards. And she's clearly stuck to that in all her books since. And yeah, I think this is another great example of that coming into fruition. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I think it's great, and I am very excited to carry on and see how this mystery wraps up. Hopefully I don't come back a bit like, oh, that's a shame, that reveal was a bit but I have plenty of faith in Leigh Bardugo to stick the landing on her books, because I think she always does. So yeah, if you like Leigh Bardugo's writing and you haven't checked this out yet, I think you will like it, is basically what I'm trying to say. Definitely some like adult themes in this. Not loads. There was like one scene in particular that I was like, I don't know if we needed that, it's a bit much. We'll see if that does come into play somewhere else. But yeah, it's really well written. I think, you know, the characters are pretty serviceable for the most part. A couple of standouts. But, you know, I think just the mysteries are really going to carry this through, and I'm really liking the world building and everything. So we'll see what happens with it. I'm very excited, but this is really bloody good so far. It's definitely my kind of dark academia, I think. I definitely would lean more to just like more fantasy than this has in it normally. I think I do prefer that, but I think for something that isn't as fantasy driven as something like the Grishaverse was, this is probably one of the best examples of it that I've come across so far. This is really good. I'm really liking it. So I will check back in when I'm done. Okay, so we are done with Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I really, really enjoyed this. 4.5 stars. Yeah, definitely one of the best versions of like a dark academia sort of novel that I've read. And yeah, I just had a really good time with it. It flew by, considering it's like 450 pages or something, I think. I think it's one of the best paced books I think I've read in this challenge so far. I was never like bored. I never felt like a lull at any point. So considering how long it is, I think that's quite impressive. And the story unfolded at a really good pace, and there were certain reveals at a really good pace. And yeah, before I knew it, it was just over. So I was quite surprised, really. It was such an easy read, even though the material in the book and like what the book's about and stuff and what happens to the characters, it gets pretty heavy and pretty dark, and quite uncomfortable at times. But I just kept turning the page. It was very page-turnery writing, which, you know, I definitely have come to expect from Leigh Bardugo. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was great. I think the plot was really interesting, and that carried me through right from the beginning. I was just gripped by that. I really liked the world. How all the plot elements came together was really satisfying, and I thought like the final confrontation in this, if you will, was really good. A bit of like, I guess, you know, a trope you would have seen before in many ways, but the way it was done and that there was like an added level of a twist to it, I think really made it stand out, and it was a very satisfying sort of ending. And it, you know, it's definitely like, this is a book one. It definitely sets up the next one. I think you would be satisfied if you were only invested in like the main like murder mystery that was going on in this one. You do get a full resolution to that and a full, you know, exploration of that. But it definitely ends off on like, okay, here's what the next book's going to be about. I think this one was very plot driven, based on how this wraps up and what the mission, if you will, is going to be in the second book, which is called Hellbent. And I will be jumping into it probably after I finish my A to Z challenge, because I'm really intrigued to see what's going to happen next. But based on how they set that up, I think the next novel is going to be a lot more character driven, or at least I hope so. And, you know, that definitely appeals to me a bit more. I think the only detractors from this were the characters and the fact that I didn't really connect with many. The only one I probably connected to was Darlington. And in the grand scheme of things, he's not in the book that much. I did like Alex, and I definitely grew to like her a bit more as time went on. I understood her plight and everything. But there is a blockade there, and I think that's because she just puts that blockade up with a lot of people, including the reader. And there was a time near like the last third of the book where her actions just didn't really make sense to me, and she got quite mad at a side character for doing what she'd asked them to do, which I thought was a bit strange. So I could understand where she was coming from at times, but like her behaviour at times was a bit like, you're kind of pissing me off here. So I'm like, why are you angry at this person for doing what you asked them to do? So, you know, I think I just struggled to connect with her in that sense. But yeah, I think we're going to really unpack her a bit more in the next one. And, you know, some of the other side characters and stuff were fine, you know, but I definitely think with how things are going at the end of this, the next one's going to be even better for me. You know, I think this probably is like a 4-star book to me, but because Lee Bardugo's writing is so good and so page-turnery, and I love just the way she describes things, I think that bumped it up to a 4.5. Kind of like, I mean, I don't want to compare this to Galapagos because night and day, this is a million times better than Galapagos was. But the way that's a 2-star book, but the writing bumped it up to 2.5 for me. I think this is probably a 4-star that gets bumped up to 4.5 because the writing was really nice. But I think I have really, really high hopes for the second book. So I'm looking forward to getting that at some point. So yeah, I wanted a bit more from the characters. The characters are fine. It's not like they were bad characters that I was like, oh, these aren't written very well, or like the characters aren't good. They are good, just not great. I think for me personally, I didn't really connect with that many of them, and I wanted a bit more from it. But I think this is definitely because this is more plot driven than character driven, and I'm hoping that's not the case in the next one. And I don't think it will be. I may be wrong. We'll see. But yeah, this was still great. The story and the world really carried me through. And I was just so intrigued by it. I think it got satisfyingly wrapped up in a really cool way. Lots of good twists and turns that made sense. I worked part of it out, and then there was another twist on top of it. It was like, oh damn, okay, you got me, well done. Which was really fun. So yeah, it was just the characters a bit, and there were times when I think to say torture porn would be going too far, and that's not what it is. But I do feel like Alex went through the ringer in this, just so much violence when she went through in this. A bit unnecessarily, I felt like it was just like, as soon as she recovered from like an injury, something else would happen to like really get her hurt. And I was like, we're doing this again. So that felt maybe a bit repetitive, and also just like, God, you're really just ruining this girl's day again and again and again. And it just felt a bit unnecessary, like how much she got injured. So if that's not something you're comfortable with, then maybe stay away. It screamed like, this is an adult novel, so we're going to, the main character's going to get hurt all the time. So I wouldn't go as far as to say this is torture porn, but it definitely was a lot, and I feel like a lot of it was unnecessary, how much pain Alex went through in this. But, so yeah, a couple of detractors, but overall, I adore this. Very page-turnery, very surprisingly quick to go through considering how chonky it is, really. The world was great, the story was great, and I think it's going to get more character-driven as the series goes on, which I am absolutely here for, and I'm loving the direction that was set up by the end of this. So this is fantastic. Definitely a standout of some of the stuff I've read in this challenge, but I'm not like super surprised because it's Lee Bardugo. I just love her writing, so I'm not like, oh my god, this is amazing, just because like Lee Bardugo is fantastic and I really like her stuff. So it's not surprising that I liked this, basically. So that's my conclusion. Make of that what you will. If you like Lee Bardugo's writing, you'll like this. If it's not for you, then you probably won't. Unless the only things you read from her are the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I would suggest checking anything else of hers out. But if you have read like her third-person multi-POV books and you didn't get on with them, maybe this isn't for you. But yeah, I thought this was an excellent example of what it was trying to do. And I can't wait to read the next one very, very soon, hopefully. And so that leads us on to our choice for O, which is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I think this is her debut. This is the first of, I think, a trilogy. There's definitely 3 of these out. And yeah, it was also a... I can't remember what streaming service it was on, but they did a show of this as well for 2 seasons. I think they adapted the first 2 books, and then it got cancelled because streaming's awful. And yeah, I have had this just floating around my shelves for a little while now. I actually got this from my friend Connor when he gave me a bunch of books to take with me when I visited him once, and this is one of them because I've always heard of this. This has been kind of in my subconscious for a long time now. I think this came out in like 2017 or something. So I've always wanted to check it out, and this was actually one of the reasons I did this challenge, because this is one of the first ones I had in mind for it, because it was just something I already owned that would fit. So I've been waiting a long time to finally get to O so I could check this one out. And yeah, I'm actually like 107 pages in, so I think I'm going to do my check-in with this now, just because there's not much point, I think, doing another one when I'm 100 and so pages in already. But yeah, basically it is another murder mystery, and it's set in just this high school. There are 5 kids who go to detention, and one of them kind of, he's like the Perez Hilton of the school, if you will. He has like this blog where he exposes like people's secrets, and somehow he has all this insider knowledge about people's deepest, darkest secrets. Very strongly hints at who he's talking about in his posts, so he posts all these secrets and these scandals. And he's at this detention with 4 other students, and he dies. So, you know, one of them's lying. Which one of them did it? Did any of them do it? I don't really know at this point. So yeah, full-blown like murder mystery. I didn't mind telling you all that much of the plot, because, I mean, it tells you who dies on the back of the book anyway, so it's not like it's supposed to be a plot twist who dies. And also, it happens about 3 pages in, so they don't waste any time just getting to the meat of the story. Like, the murder happens instantly. There's like barely any build-up, which I really liked. I was quite surprised. I thought it was going to, like, oh, maybe halfway through the book there'll be a murder, but no, right from the off. So I really enjoyed that, and it's wasting no time just jumping in. Again, this feels like a very well-paced book. We've already gotten, like, the thing is, you know, these 4 other students have these dark secrets that were going to be exposed. And I think a lot of them have multiple secrets. We don't know all of them yet, obviously, but like I said, I'm only like a third of the way through a book, and we already have learnt some of these secrets, and people have already found out some of them. So it's not like they're saving all these secrets till the end, which I like. So we're going to get some well-paced out revelations, I feel. You know, the character's okay. I'm not really leaning towards any in particular. Like, the thing is, you know, it says like a geek, a jock, a criminal, a princess, a murder. Who would you believe? Like, they're supposed to be quite stereotypical, so they are cardboard cutout characters in many ways, because they're supposed to fit into like those tropes. This is basically like the Breakfast Club, if one of them died. It's that basically. That's your pitch. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the pitch originally for this book. So yeah, they're very stereotypical. I'm hoping we will peel back some more layers to them as time goes on. But, you know, they kind of fit the stereotypes thus far, so there's not much to the characters. It's definitely more about the whodunit plot, I think. And, you know, it's much more about the secrets these characters have rather than the characters themselves. I think it's about the mystery of them rather than, you know, you want to get invested in the actual people that they are. I think you just want to get invested in what they're hiding. So in terms of that, I think it's doing a very good job of it. It definitely screams of this was written in the 2010s. Particularly the first couple of chapters, you know, I was kind of cringing a bit at the dialogue and the way they were speaking. I was like, oh god, this is such like a 2010 book. Even though it's 2017, who knows when it was written. But it definitely feels like maybe sort of the near end of books being written like they were in 2010, and like for this target audience and this kind of thing. But I got over that quite quickly. I don't know if I just got used to the writing or it got better. I do think the dialogue got a bit better. It was quite clunky dialogue at the start, like just spinning all this exposition, and I was like, oh, people don't talk like this. I do think that's gotten better. So, you know, maybe clunky dialogue in exchange for them just getting to like the plot like instantly. I guess I would take that trade. So yeah, I am intrigued to see where it's going to go. I have a theory about who it was. We'll have to wait and see if I'm right. I imagine we're not going to be finding out who did it for quite a while yet. But yeah, some secrets are being spilled. We're spending a decent amount of time with the other like 4 characters who were witness to this murder. And it will be interesting to see where the twists and turns go from here, and, you know, are they going to form an alliance, these 4 people? Are they going to kind of tear each other apart? Because there's sort of romances in between the group of 4, but also mainly outside. So, you know, there's a lot of drama with relationships and family with all of them. So, you know, everyone seems to just have a secret in this place. And I imagine they're all going to be horribly, horribly exposed. But so far, all 4 of them do have a clear motive. I'm guessing the twist is that none of the 4 of them actually did it. It's going to be an outsider influence somehow, because that just makes the most sense to me from how things played out. So I do have a guess, but we'll have to wait and see if I'm right. You know, it hasn't been disproven yet, so we'll see. I think, yeah. maybe I'm just on a high because I correctly guessed the murderer in one of the Thursday Murder Club books, which never happens to me. So maybe I'm just getting a bit of hubris, thinking I've worked it out. I mean, I hope who my guess is isn't who it is, because otherwise I guess the killer on page 10, which would be pretty depressing in a 350 page book. So let's hope that's not the case. But yeah, I'm enjoying this so far. I think it's pretty good. At first I was like, oh no, this isn't going to be for me. But the writing definitely got better, in my opinion. And again, I think this was Karen McManus's debut. So for a debut, I think she's done well to get me as hooked as I am this early on. The characters are just stereotypes, but they're supposed to be, I think. There's nothing groundbreaking here. There's nothing I haven't seen before with this kind of thing. But I am looking forward to finding out who did it. And I think that's what I'm most interested in, rather than anything else right now than the characters or any of their secrets and stuff. So we'll see what happens. The fact that this is the first in at least a trilogy of books is really intriguing to me. So I don't know how they're going to leave it off. If we don't find out who did it in this, I'm going to be furious. But I'm sure that's not the case. But the fact that this does continue on for at least another 2 books is very intriguing. So I'm interested in how this is going to end and how this is going to wrap up. But for now, I'm actually really liking this. I only started reading it this morning, and I'm over 100 pages in, so I think it's going to be a pretty easy breezy read, which is why I'm not going to do another check-in at the halfway mark, because I think I probably will just finish it in the time it takes for me to set my camera up to record another check-in. But good, I'm having fun with it. I was worried that I really wasn't going to like it at first, but I think it has won me over quite quickly. I don't think this is going to be like a favourite by any means, but I do think this is going to be a solid, fun way of just killing some time reading a book, which is better than Galapagos, so I'll take it. Yeah, I think this will be good fun, and I'm really enjoying it so far, and I will check back in when I've finished. Okay, checking in with One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. Finished this yesterday, I believe, last night. And yeah, I liked it. I didn't love it. I think it started off stronger than it finished. I think it just, at least for me, for my personal taste with where I guess the character arcs went more so than the plot, it kind of overstayed its welcome slightly for me. I think it reached where it wanted to reach, I think, character-wise, probably about 2/3 of the way through. And I feel like the development after that was just stilted, because maybe the book was a bit too long. I think what it comes down to is the main romance that kind of develops throughout this, I just didn't really buy. 2 of like the 4 main characters kind of embark on a romance, and they had a connection when they were kids, I think, and now I'm kind of revisiting that, because now they're, with everything that's happened, they're kind of, obviously talking again and back in touch and hanging out again. And I like the idea of it, I like the concept of it, but for some reason, I think it was more so the way it was written. I think maybe I'm just not the target audience range for this book, and the romance was written so melodramatically. And, it's like, oh, but my God, when that boy smiles, oh, I love him. I'm like, I think that's what it comes down to. And the book starts off with one of the characters being totally enamored with someone else. And then the events, that kick things off take place. And the next day she's like, I'm just suddenly not interested in him anymore. Because I guess she's interacted with this other guy that she forms the main romance with. And I just feel like, why you spend time setting that other romance up at the beginning to then not do anything with it? It comes back in a sort of way, but not any significance that it was needed to be there, really. It just felt like a strange bit of padding, or like they changed their mind about who they were going to romantically pair together, but then didn't go back and rewrite the start. That's kind of how it felt to me. It was a very strange diversion that, for a while I was reading it thinking, oh, maybe this is going to be paid off in a major way, maybe there's going to be like a twist to this or something. No. And even when they do revisit it, we don't physically like spend time with the guy she was originally interested in. So it just felt a bit like a waste of time. You know, the characters are very tropey in a way, and a bit one-dimensional. I think some of them are better than others. I think Addie probably came out the best from this. I think she was easily the best character in this. I really liked her kind of journey, her arc. I think that got resolved in a really nice way, mainly because it was about her finding herself, not finding a romance, and I felt like all the others kind of got caught in that trap. So it was just more appealing to me. So Addie was definitely, I think, my favourite character in this. Again, I did like the pacing of all the reveals coming out and about what they were, how they were handled. I'm a bit more mixed on. You know, I do think depression gets quite villainized in this, which I wasn't very keen on at all. Also, it's like a plot twist, this character's gay, and I was kind of like, that shouldn't be a plot twist. So I was a bit kind of mixed on that, because the way they build up to that, it does it in one way, and it is supposed to just be like, surprise, this character's gay, rather than like sowing any sort of seeds towards it. So it just feels a bit like you're just using that for a plot twist rather than, you know, an aspect of the character you actually appreciate and respect. So that felt a bit, especially because when the reveal comes, they then basically don't do anything with it. In terms of the actual mystery, I'm glad I had a suspicion, like, is it going to be this person, like 10 pages in? Thankfully, that wasn't the case. They very soon after, they kind of talked about the possibility of who I thought it was going to be being the killer. And they kept hammering that point home again and again and again. So I was like, okay, it's not going to be that. That's fine then. Because they just made it would have been just way too obvious, I guess. What actually the resolution is, I thought was well set up for the most part. I do like the resolution to this. You know, I didn't guess the twists and turns of who was behind it, so that was cool. So yeah, in terms of the actual mystery, I thought it was quite satisfying, and I did like that. But character-wise, where it ended up, and just kind of became the main focus, I was a bit like, And this case would have been solved so much quicker if they'd done something that to me was just like, it's the obvious thing for you to go and do, to like research into this area or do this thing. And near the end, they work it out because of this thing, and then like, we've just been so busy, or like, I didn't feel like doing this, it just didn't feel right to do this. I'm like, this is the first thing you should have done, and you would have worked out who did it straight away. So that just felt like the characters being really dumb and really stupid just so the book can be longer. So I didn't necessarily like all the ways in which they got to the resolution of the murder mystery, but I did like what the resolution was. But yeah, the main thing, I just think the romance element of this took way too much of the screen time, if you will. In the second half of the book, I just didn't care, because it was just so basic and so tropey, and like, I've seen this kind of relationship time and time again, and it's not going to work out. I feel like, evidently. Maybe it will, because, you know, there's another 2 books going into the future. You know, it does end on like a hopeful note and that kind of thing, so it definitely is like, you could read this as a standalone and move on and be happy. I'm certainly not going to continue in the series. I have heard the other books are even better, but, you know, I was happy with this. I'm not invested in the main romance, so I don't think I could be asked reading another 2 books about it. You know, I didn't care about most of the characters enough to feel like I need to know what happens next with them. I think this left off in a pretty decent place for the most part. So yeah, it was fine. It was kind of harmless. I think if I was a bit younger when I read this, I'd enjoy it more. But yeah, it's very 2010s. It's very cardboard cutout characters. It's very romance. If you don't like a romance that's really kind of forced down your throat and really cheesy, you know, I'm not sure I'd recommend this, because it suddenly becomes kind of all about that romance for at least the last third of the book. I'm like, I care more about the other characters, to be honest. And yeah, even near the end, like, there's, I guess, a miscommunication trope between them that just felt forced. And yeah, so the romance for me was a big, but the actual plot, yay, and the murder mystery, yay. I thought that you know, that was well handled, but a lot of the character stuff was kind of stilted and bland. You know, I don't think this offers anything that sets it apart from something else of this kind of ilk. It just so happened to be the one that I guess was popular. But I didn't hate it. You know, I think the writing did kind of fall back at times into like the sort of problems I had with it near the start, where it just felt very exposition-y and very like, people do not speak like that, humans do not speak like that. It fell kind of back into that trap near the end. But for the middle part, I thought it got a lot better. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it was, the writing was decent. And for a debut, I believe this was her debut. I think it's impressive. But yeah, I kind of got what I wanted from it in terms of the murder mystery and the plot line. But there's just so many cliche characters, even like the side characters. You know, you get like the classy, like bitchy ex-best friend, and everyone kind of all talking behind their back as they're walking down the corridor at school. And like, you've seen that kind of scene in a TV show set at a high school. You know, there's that in spades in this. It just, I wanted it to be, I guess, a bit more fresh. Considering this, you know, this isn't even 10 years old. I feel like I wish this had been something a bit more different, I guess. Or certainly not as bogged down in the romance as it got. You know, I feel like this is more of a romance book than I was led to believe by like the back of the, you know, the blurb and everything. So that aspect of it wasn't for me. It will absolutely be for some people. And again, I think maybe 5, even 7 years ago when this first came out, or 8 years ago now, I think, you know, I think I would have been a lot more into this side of things. But because I've just read, I guess, more nuanced portrayals of characters like them in other books, that it just feels a bit basic now. So, you know, it was good. I'm sure, you know, it was maybe a bit more impactful at the time it came out. So yeah, I'd give it a 3 stars. I didn't hate it. I'm glad I read it, to, you know, finally have checked it out, because it has been sat on my shelf for a while. But yeah, the characters didn't do much for me other than Addie, really. I didn't like how it handled some plot twists, in terms of like character-based ones. Plot-based twists I thought worked well, and they did like the resolution to the mystery. But yeah, I'm not going to be continuing the series. It didn't grip me enough to, I think, warrant that. And also, the title just makes no sense. I think that's another big thing for me. Like, let me assure you, many more than one of them is lying. Like, they're all lying. Every single character you meet is lying. So, the title just also doesn't make sense, which feels a bit strange. It's a great title, don't get me wrong, but, you know, maybe have a book that actually relates to it would be my advice. And so we move on to my choice for P, which is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. Another kind of classic that I've been meaning to check out for a very long time. And I've had this copy of it, I think, for a couple of years as well. I got this in Oxford in a bookshop a couple of years ago. It's a really nice, like, lovely edition of it. I really like, you know, I'm not big into hardbacks, as I think I've mentioned on the channel a few times, but this one is really lovely. I think because it's a bit more compact and, you know, a bit of a smaller page size than most books would be, and yeah, just the design of it I think is really nice. You know, the like Disney version of Peter Pan I think was always one of my favourite Disney films. I really like that kind of iteration. I remember getting a Captain Hook like action figure at Disneyland Paris when I was a kid, because I was like that into it. I still remember going to watch I think it was the second one, it's like Return to Neverland or something. I still remember watching that at the cinema. Mainly because it was a traumatic day for me, because I actually lost my teddy bear that I loved when we went to watch that film. Never saw it again. It was devastating. So that kind of has that's some of my Peter Pan memories for you, my Peter Pan based trauma. But yeah, this I've been meaning to check out for ages. I bought this, and I bought The Jungle Book, and I bought the Legend of Robin Hood, or like the Tales of Robin Hood, whatever that's called. I bought all those 3 together at this shop. I've read Robin Hood since, because I love the Robin Hood tales, but I've still yet to read this in The Jungle Book. So this felt again like a really good opportunity to check one of these out. And yeah, since I loved like the Disney version of the story, and I'm sure this is going to be a bit different to that. You know, there's so many iterations of Peter Pan and the Peter Pan legend. But But, you know, I kind of want to go back to the original one. But since I loved, you know, the Disney version, I've always been meaning to kind of go back to the source material. And I know the original version of Peter Pan is obviously the play that J.M. Barrie wrote, and then he wrote this book from that play. So that could be interesting to see how it translates. Because I know Captain Hook and his merry men, and you know, his men were, I think they were conceived as an idea in the play just because they needed something to be happening on stage while the curtains were closed, so they could like change the set, I think. So then they did the whole like, here's Captain Hook and we can, you know, fight him and his pirate friends for a bit while we change backstage, or change behind the curtain. I think that's the sole reason that they were introduced to the play. They weren't originally in it, and now they're kind of like an integral part of that story. So it'd be interesting to see how, you know, they fare in this as well, and this version of it. I've read the first couple of chapters, but I will save my thoughts until I either check in or finish. I mean, to be honest, I think I'll just come back and check in when I finish this, because it's such a short book. It's barely 200 pages, so I think I'll just do a check-in when I'm done. But yeah, I've always been intrigued to check out the original story. It kind of hits all the notes I've expected it to hit so far, so we'll see if that continues. But yeah, I will be very intrigued to see how I fare with this, given how old it is now. And I will check in when I'm done. Okay, checking back in with Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. I just got done reading this, just finished. And yeah, I really liked this. I think I'd give it 3.5 stars, with a caveat that this book is 113 years old. So I think you should go into it, if you're going to read it today, knowing that its depiction of gender roles and its depiction of Native Americans is incredibly racist. You know, they do use a slur for them, you know, quite frequently. It's just like the normal term by which they're referred to, which was quite uncomfortable to read. So wasn't a fan of that. And it did make it quite uncomfortable at parts to get through certain sections of the book. It's limited to a couple of chapters, so you can just skip over those parts, I think. And, you know, this kind of feels like a novel where the main, like, middle portion of the story is just like a series of adventures rather than like a long-running tangent, like a long-running narrative. So I think if something is making you a bit like, ooh, with this, and you still want to carry on reading it, and I wouldn't blame you if that was enough to put you off, I think you could skip to the next chapter and you'd be fine. Because yeah, those instances are quite isolated in terms of like its racist depictions. There are more isolated incidences. The whole gender roles thing, and what, you know, at the time, you know, the idea of all women are good for is, you know, that kind of runs throughout this, unfortunately, and did kind of piss me off. So, you know, it's very much a product of its time, and it sucks in a way, because I think what it has to say about growing up and maturing and getting older and letting things go, I think is really nice. I really like the commentary on that, and I think my favourite line in this, and I think it's a line that I've seen people quote before, is, you know, to die would be an awfully big adventure, which I love that sentiment. And, you know, this is kind of saying nearer the end, like, it's okay to grow up, it's okay to, you know, lose your childhood as long as you had one, and you can still kind of refer back to that. You know, it's very much saying, you know, Peter's almost in the wrong, I think, to want to cling to that and not to grow up. This is definitely, I think, J.M. Barrie maybe struggling with that himself, and kind of Peter Pan is like an insert character for him. And I think that really comes across in his writing, because my God, was his writing not really for me. After I read the first couple of chapters, I was like, oh wow, this is bad. I'm not going to get on with this. It's just his style. He, as an author, he just injects his voice and his opinions in what's going on so much. But then there'll be some sections where he just tells the story, as most authors would, and then sometimes he just pokes his nose in and says, here's what I think about this character and this choice. I'm like, go away, I don't want to hear about you. And, you know, some people will enjoy that. Some people enjoy that kind of authorial voice popping in. But when it's, you know, not always there, and when it's kind of annoying, it's, yeah, very strange. Particularly near the end, where it just kind of like outright says like, oh, I want to hate this character, but I don't. She's actually my favourite character. I'm like, what are you trying to say? Why were you hating on this character and then saying, actually, she's my favourite? Like, what are you talking about? There was a lot of that near the end, and he was kind of like, you know, oh, I could tell Mr. and Mrs. Darling that their children are coming home soon, but why spoil the surprise? I'm like, just let the story play out. You know, I think it's so obvious that this is an adaptation of a play beforehand, because there is a sequence, you know, the whole I do believe in fairies thing. I'm kind of assuming people just know the story of Peter Pan going into this. There's lots of versions of it. I don't think I need to go in, you know, a detailed kind of explanation of the plot. You know, there's Wendy Darling is the main character. You know, she's this young girl. She has two younger brothers. One day, Peter Pan comes to their window. He's a boy who never grows up from Neverland. They all go to Neverland, have some adventures, and come back. You know, that's the crux of it. They fight some pirates. You know, there's a lot of interpretations of it. I think the 2003 film with, I think Jeremy Sumpter is the guy's name who played Peter Pan. Jason Isaacs was Captain Hook. You know, that one's kind of the iconic, I think, version for me, at least a live action one. I think it actually stays pretty damn close to the book. I actually thought the story in the book was going to go quite off of like the Disney version or, you know, those movie versions, but it really didn't. It was actually a pretty similar plotline to what those adaptations are, and for some reason I always had it in my head that this was going to be so different. But anyway, yeah, there's like the whole I do believe in fairies section that's so obvious. Like in the play you'd be getting the audience to say that, but in this, the way they kind of get around that and don't really change it enough, I'm like, oh, that was kind of a rubbish resolution. So I think it probably needed a bit more of an identity away from the story of the play when you're writing it in the novel, and that didn't happen, which is kind of a shame. So it does make some sections feel a bit weak. I think the pacing's kind of all over the place. Like, you know, suddenly they've been in Netherland for weeks, and like Wendy is being like the mother to Peter and the Lost Boys. They've just fallen into this routine, and that happens in like a page. And then we spend like 5 pages with Captain Hook just, you know, moaning about his life. And I'm like, do we need 5 pages of that? And you've skipped over it, all that interesting stuff there. And then there were some just weird kind of tangents that the book goes on that just didn't really add much. And then, you know, the final battle's here. Oh, it's done. Okay, interesting. So that felt a bit weird. It feels like J.M. Barrie was, I don't know, just more interested in writing the adult characters. Like, we spend so much time in Captain Hook's head and hearing his thought processes, and Mrs. Darling as well in particular. But when we're just spending time with Peter and Wendy and the Lost Boys and all that, we don't really get an insight into their psyche and their states of mind. Certainly not in as much detail as we do with Captain Hook and stuff. So I don't know if J.M. Barrie just preferred writing Hook, or I don't know. But that felt a bit strange. But also it meant when Captain Hook showed up, the plot and the story kind of just ground to a halt, because it was all about his character rather than the story. So the writing really wasn't always for me. Sometimes it was fine, but as soon as J.M. Barrie actually put his voice and his opinion into what was going on, and like talking to us directly, again, it just felt like a play, and I'm like, it just, I don't think the story needed that, and I don't care about your commentary. I want to make my own mind up, thanks. And, you know, some people that's not going to bother, but for personal taste, I really didn't get on with J.M. Barrie's writing for the most part. You know, it just wasn't for me. Those first few chapters, I think, were the worst, when I think sometimes he just forgets that the nanny, Nana, the nanny of the children, is supposed to be a dog. Sometimes I feel like he just forgets that and just writes Nana as if they're just a person. And obviously, you know, maybe it's just commentary on, like, you know, pets are part of your family. But tell that to Mr. Darling, because my God. But it just felt a bit bizarre. Especially, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Darling are more than happy to just go out for an evening and leave their kids alone with a dog. I'm like, what in the Madeleine McCann is going on here? No wonder they disappeared. Like, very strange. But, you know, maybe that's just values and attitudes of the time again, coming back into it. But, yeah, it's so hard to kind of talk about that, because this is such an old book now. It's over a century old. But, you know, I have to treat it as I'm reading it now, and the racist moments were awful. And, you know, this is always just saying, like, you know, women are just meant to be mothers, that's it. And it's like, oh, give me a break. And that's all Wendy was. She was just like, oh, I just need to be the best doting mother that I can be. I'm like, oh, please give her an actual character, dear God. So that stuff really didn't work for me. But the exploration, just like having adventures with the pirates and exploring Neverland and talking about growing up and talking about their pasts and like forgetting their mothers and stuff like that, that was all very well and good. But then it just comes back to the treatment of Wendy in particular as a character. There's just nothing to her. Even Tinkerbell is an arsehole. She is awful in this, so unlikable. I mean, Peter's not particularly likable in this. He's an annoying brat. But Tinkerbell is just evil. Like, she actually tries to kill Wendy. I'm like, my God. So, you know, that's not great. But then when she's introduced, she's like sexualized, and they talk about like her curves and her cleavage. I'm like, oh my God, like, why are you talking about... She's a fairy. Why are you talking about a fairy like that? And there's a line as well about Wendy, and it's like, you know, she's all woman from head to toe. I'm like, she is a child. Why are you talking about her like that? Is this Stephen King? Am I reading Carrie again by accident? So that was just... There's a lot in the writing that's so uncomfortable. And I try to remind myself, like, it's just the time period. Because the heart of the story is really good, and I think some of the messages are really nice, and I did really like the way things kind of pay off with that in a way. I mean, it is kind of a creepy ending as well, but it is still an interesting kind of cycle that the characters fall into at the end, which can be seen as sweet, can also be seen as creepy. It depends which way you fall on. Captain Hook's defeat in this I actually really liked, and I found very humorous and very funny. That was probably the best writing that we got. The idea of like Captain Hook's obsession with good form, and how that kind of gets a payoff was actually really well set up and very satisfying. So I liked that. That was definitely the highlight for me. But yeah, a lot of the characters were just sort of like, nyeh. And sometimes it just felt like there were characters he just didn't care about. And some characters he cared too much about, almost. I just think he let his opinion on the story and the characters, he was kind of like forcing that on us and like telling us what to think about them. And I just think that made the story lesser than it could have been. And obviously the way that some of the characters are presented, you know, with racial stereotypes and outdated, you know, opinions on what women are good for, you know, it doesn't offer much in terms of characters for the most part. But when it's just, you know, Peter Pan on his jolly adventures, it is a good time. I do like the band of pirates, and their kind of banter between each other was fun. You know, when they were kind of exploring the Lost Boys and their pasts was interesting. And, you know, Peter's reluctance to kind of let his childhood go. All of that, I feel like, was, you know, a rich goldmine to explore with, you know, themes and stuff. But J.M. Barrie kind of tapped into other things instead. So, yeah, for the most part, the writing really wasn't for me. The overarching story I did like. You know, there's some lovely lines in this. And, you know, I think just my fondness for Peter Pan, the other adaptations that I've seen, you know, I think that did kind of boost this along. And, you know, it's only 200 pages. It's like 207 pages. So I did get through it really quickly. You even though some of the pacing was a bit all over the place, at the end of the day, it's still quite short. So, you know, it wasn't a chore to get through by any stretch of the imagination. So, you know, it was a pleasant-ish read, but there are some things that just made me quite uncomfortable. And if people didn't want to experience that for themselves, I wouldn't blame them. So, yeah, I think the ideas and the story itself is brilliant, but I think it's kind of let down by its execution. Viewing it as a product of its time, I give it a comfortable 3.5 stars. I think it's kind of a fondness and familiarity with Peter Pan that's giving it the extra 0.5, but I am going to stick with 3.5, I think, because I did enjoy reading it for the most part. And I think if I did read it again, knowing what J.M. Barrie's writing in it is like, I think I would enjoy it more. But overall, you know, it was a good time. I'm glad I read it. I can see why when it first came out, it was like this magical story, that kind of is still being printed 113 years later. But I think if this had been written now, it would be much richer and more nuanced, and something really, really special. And it's kind of sad that this was written 113 years too early, I guess, is the main issue with it. But yeah, there's still some good moments in it, of course. And I do like what it has to say about growing up. It's a difficult one to really land a solid opinion on, but I am going to stick with 3.5 because I do think I got a lot out of it as I read it. But yeah, if this was literally as it was, this just came out today, printed in the way it was and said the things it did, this would be like a 1 star or even half a star. But yeah, I'm trying to be a bit more impartial than that and take into account its time period and like separate the content from, our society and our more updated and good views on things. There are some things in here. There's actually like non-binary representation in this, which is kind of crazy. It talks about how there are, some fairies who, are boys, and there are some fairies who are girls, and there are some who don't know what they are, and they kind of roll with that. And I liked that. I was like, okay, non-binary rep 113 years ago, that's cool. Just a shame about everything else, really. Shame about how you write the female characters, and the Native American characters. So yeah, kind of a mixed bag, but I'm mostly onto the side of appreciating it. But yeah, I wouldn't say like, I'll rush to recommend you read this version of Peter Pan. I would probably say if you want to experience the Peter Pan story, watch an adaptation of it rather than read the book, because I think nowadays more adaptations of it have definitely removed or changed the more problematic elements of the story. So that's my little Peter Pan rant over and done with. And yeah, I don't currently own my book for Q, which is obviously going to be our next letter. So I will just kind of come back when I own it and talk you through my choice then. Okay, checking back in. I feel like it's been a while since I did an update for this. A very long while. But anyway, my choice for Q. Finally procured it thanks to my dad buying it for me. So shout out to him. Queen of the Tiles by Hannah Alcav is my choice for Q. This was one, again, I just had in mind right from the off for Q when I decided to do this challenge. Just because of someone else on YouTube who I follow, who just so happened to talk about this in one of her vlogs, and seemed full of praise for it. So I'm intrigued to kind of get into this one and see how I fare. I've only read like the little prologue chapter so far, but I thought I'd just introduce this now. And I'm actually going to be away in Cardiff for the next couple of days, so I'm going to try and get through a bit of this along with another book that I'm taking. And see how I feel about it. But yeah, this is quite an interesting premise, I feel like. The main character's name is Najwa. I need to learn how to pronounce that. And yeah, it's basically Najwa is attending a Scrabble tournament, and a year before, at the previous Scrabble tournament, her best friend, who was like in line to win the entire championship, she died. So I think it's very much a story about grief and stuff like that, and she's kind of coming back, a year on, and I think she kind of works out or realises or is told somehow that her friend's death a year prior wasn't as, I guess, innocent as it may have appeared, and perhaps it is suggested that she was murdered. And I'm guessing she's going to try and find out what happened to her friend and who did it. So I just thought that was a really interesting kind of idea for a whodunit to set around like a Scrabble tournament, which I think is really interesting. It looks like every chapter also begins with like a word you could play in Scrabble, like a definition, how many points it's worth in the game, that kind of then relates to the chapter that follows it. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing as well. But yeah, I'm just in the prologue bit that I've read, I really, really liked the writing, so I'm hoping that will continue in this one. And yeah, it should be a fun, interesting read. This video has just been full of like big whodunit books, which, I wasn't really necessarily expecting. I didn't expect Ninth House to be a murder mystery, but it was. I knew One of Us Is Lying would be, and this one is as well. So who knows if there's more to come in this video. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm really excited to carry on with this because it's off to a pretty strong start. And yeah, I don't know how much I'll get through over the next couple of days. I've also got a job recently. Hooray, at last. So I don't have as much reading time as I did up till now. So, for me at least, not for you guys, I guess, because, you're getting all this fully edited and already done, so it doesn't matter. But, I don't have as much reading time, so it's going to take me longer to get through books now. But yeah, so who knows how far I'll get anytime soon, but I will check in probably at the halfway mark and let you know how I'm getting on. Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks, I think, since I last checked in, and I've actually finished Queen of the Tiles. I just finished it earlier today. I said I was going to do like a check-in halfway through. There wasn't an opportunity to do that because I was away, and then I've been at work, and yeah, so I just got on and ended up just binging the last 100 pages today, since I had a day off. And yeah, Queen of the Tiles, Hannah Alcaf. I would settle on 3 stars for this in the end. I think I could be convinced to push to a 3.5, but it'd be a very weak 3.5. So I'm just going to stick with the 3. Yeah, I wanted to love this one a lot more than I did. I think I let videos I saw about this on, BookTube in general, I think I let them maybe hype me up for this a bit too much and set my expectations a bit too high, which I'm normally quite good at kind of leveling expectations, but I really, really wanted to enjoy this, and I think it did get off to a very interesting start. The premise, I think, is just a really fun idea to like set a murder mystery at a Scrabble tournament. So, it had a lot going for it, and it was good. I did enjoy it, but I do think the mystery element for me fell completely flat at the end. The explanations that we were kind of getting for what happened, I didn't feel anything. I didn't really connect with most of the characters, I feel like. I think they tried so hard to kind of paint some people as like, oh, it couldn't be them. I was like, well, it's them then, isn't it? So there was an element of that going on as well. So I think the book tried a bit too hard at times to try and, pull the wool over your eyes over who might be holding a secret or 5. So yeah, I was a bit like underwhelmed with how the mystery element wrapped up. The character arcs and stuff I thought were done pretty nicely, but again, it felt a bit rushed at the end. And I feel like what we kind of saw within the novel, the events of it, I think needed to carry on a bit longer. It ends quite suddenly. It's like, okay, we've worked out who's done it, and that's the end. And I feel like we needed a bit more of like okay, let's just talk about what just happened. And we didn't get that. So I feel like narratively it's a bit unsatisfying ultimately for me. but it was well written for the most part. And, you know, I think there are some decent moments of like structure with, I think I talked about before, like every chapter starts with like a word in Scrabble dictionary and like how much it's worth and stuff that relates to the chapter that follows it. And I had a lot of fun with those because it's like, oh, this kind of gives me a hint of what's to come. So I liked stuff like that. But yeah, ultimately I was a bit like, yeah, okay, it's fine. I wanted a lot more than it got. I think the premise of it is really good, but maybe the execution wasn't my favourite, I feel. So yeah, fell a bit flat mystery-wise. And, you know, some elements of it, how it was tying things up, it's like, well, I guess this happened, or it could have been this thing, rather than getting a concrete answer on some things, which I found quite frustrating. I also thought Najwa, the main character, she kind of got on my nerves at times. I found her quite unlikable and annoying and a bit selfish at times. And, you know, characters can be that way, and that's fine. But I don't think it was the intention for us to dislike the main character, and I did at times. She was quite needlessly rude to some people at times. I was like, there's no need for that. Come on. So, you know, we're supposed to be rooting for her to like solve the mystery and supposed to be feeling sorry for her. And sometimes I'm just like, you're quite spiteful, actually. I'm not sure I enjoy you. So I think that kind of detracts and takes me out of the storyline a bit because I'm not like actually rooting for our main character. And that's, you know, on rare instances. For the most part, I thought Najwa was a decent main character. But yeah, there was just a lot of kind of things that felt a bit underbaked or predictable. And there was, I don't know when I noticed it, but so many different characters kind of fell into the trap of saying like a similar sort of line. And it was like, oh, you know, what did I do? When did I do that thing? You'll have to be more specific. You know, oh, I do that so many times. You'll have to be more specific. So many characters say that line, and I'm like, oh god, you know. So that kind of stood out to me. And like, maybe we could have, you know, been a bit more diverse with some of like the quirky, snarky moments that the characters have, because they just all say the same kind of thing to, you know, be sarcastic. But, you know, I think this might have been a debut. So for a debut, I think it's still impressive. I mean, writing a book in itself is just impressive. So, you know, it's a decent and fun time. I think some people will get more out of this than I did. But yeah, it's decent character work. It's a decent enough mystery with some twists and turns in it. But it did kind of leave me ultimately a bit unsatisfied. And yeah, I think I just let my expectations get a bit too high for this one, because the reviewer on BookTube that I follow loved this and gave it like 4.5 stars. But yeah, it was fine. I enjoyed it. But yeah, it's not something I don't think I'm going to be revisiting. I think it's just a one-off. I don't think it's like the start of a series or anything, which, you know, I can't really see this being a series anyway. But yeah, it was, for what it was, you know, an admirable effort. I think, you know, it does what it wants to do mostly successfully. So yeah, it's not like I disliked it, but I wasn't as enamoured with it as I thought I was going to be, particularly at the start, because I thought the start was really intriguing and there were some good things happening, but I think the mystery didn't quite stick the landing for me, sadly. But still, good time, not mad I read it, glad to have checked it out, but yeah, it's fine, is my ultimate review. So yeah, that was Queen of the Tiles. My choice for R, I haven't actually got that book yet, so I'll have to just wait until I get that and then I'll talk to you guys about it. So yeah, I will check back in then. Okay, so for you, it would have just been 1 second of a video, but for me it's been like 3 months. So yeah, feels weird to be checking back in after all this time. I have been reading, I just haven't really had the opportunity to sit down and like record and talk like this. And I still don't really, because I'm very, very tired, but I was like, I need to talk about what I've been reading before I forget all my thoughts on it. So yeah, we're back again. It's been like 3 months. So yeah, I mean, it just took me a while to get my book for R anyway, physically. You know, I needed to save my pennies. But I got it and I read it and we're all good now. So yeah, I actually finished this one a couple of weeks ago. I started it when I was away in Cardiff, and then yeah, I finished it a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, my choice for R was Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I would be very surprised if anyone's watching this video who hasn't heard of this, be it the book or the film, the Amazon Prime film that came out. I think it was a couple of years ago now, and I think there's going to be a sequel. I feel like that's true. But yeah, I was intrigued by this for a bit. I mean, actually, that's not entirely true. That's kind of a lie. I wasn't at all interested when the film was coming out. But the more of the hype I saw for it, the more I was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a try. You know, for some reason, I just don't know if the trailers particularly grabbed me for it. And I guess I think as a British person, you know, seeing a film about the royal family and then about, like, you know, the first family, I'm kind of like, oh, do I want to be watching anything about that with our world being the way it is? I don't know. But eventually, when I was just kind of coming up with choices for this list, I was like, no, let's read it, because I heard good things about it. I followed a lot of people on Twitter when my Twitter account still existed, who loved this and loved the book, loved the film. I was like, you know what, let's give it a try. So I settled on it and decided on it. And yeah, I read it. And probably it took me a couple of weeks, I think, on and off I was reading it. I also watched the film afterwards, and I thought the film was really good. Made some surprising changes, but overall I think a pretty faithful and fun movie. I thought it was very wholesome. I feel the very same way, I think, about the movie as I do about the film. The movie as I do about the film. I'm tired. I feel the same way about the movie as I do about the book, I think. So yeah, I would give this 3.5 stars. And I definitely enjoyed the romance elements of it much more than, like, the actual plot that was going on. There's a lot of, like, political drama going on in this, and whenever that was happening, I completely tuned out. I just didn't care about Alex's mother trying to, you know, secure another 4 years as president. I did not care. So, you know, I think there's a bit too much plot in this for my taste. I would have liked just a bit more vibes. When we got the vibes were vibing. I do think it was a very wholesome romance between Alex and Henry. If you don't know what this is about, for whatever reason, it's about one of the princes of England, you know, a fictional prince of England and a fictional first son of the first female president of the United States, who seemingly have hated each other for years, when the opposite turns out to actually be true, and they fall in love, and, you know, they're kind of negotiating what that means for Alex, who is the son of the president, and his political aspirations, and obviously Henry, who is the Prince of England. You know, is he going to be king one day? You know, can a member of the royal family be openly gay? Because Henry's gay, Alex is bi. So yeah, it's a good representation in regards to that. But yeah, I would say I had a good time with it. I thought it was very wholesome at times. I really liked Alex and Henry. I was actually quite surprised, just judging by, like, what I'd seen and heard, like, from the film and everything. I thought it was going to be told from, like, 2 POVs, but no, this is entirely from Alex's POV, which is interesting. I do think he's probably the more interesting character to me out of the 2 leads, so I guess it's good in a way that it was all his POV, but I would have liked to maybe have been in Henry's head a bit more. I thought we had a few brief moments where we're in other people's shoes, but it is basically told in Alex's point of view. It's also kind of written in, like, the present tense, so as we're reading it, it is happening, which isn't my favourite thing, so I don't know if I particularly gelled with that as much. But, you know, that's personal taste. And yeah, I didn't care about the political plot at all. And I do think all the side characters were pretty bone dry and pretty dull and boring. I only really cared about Alex and Henry, but I guess if I had to care about any characters, it's useful that it was the main two. I did really enjoy their romance, and I really enjoyed the kind of banter between them. You know, it's sort of mixed media in a way, because they email and text a lot as they're kind of like getting to know each other, and I really did enjoy those sorts of exchanges in the book, of them just like taking the piss out of each other. That was quite delightful to read, and I really enjoyed that, and I kind of wish we had more of that, because, you know, there's times where we just get really long explanations and descriptions of things. I'm like, not interested. But yeah, when it focuses on its characters and not on the actual like plot that's going on and we're supposed to care about, I think it really does shine. But yeah, I didn't really connect with any of the side characters. I didn't really connect with the actual plot. Just the romance and the vibes, I thought, were very well done and excellent. I can see why people kind of went a bit crazy for this when it came out, and especially when the film came out and, you know, they cast two hot guys as the leads. Makes sense. So yeah, it was good fun. I think it does what it wants to do very successfully. I think it is, you know, a decent example of it. Just as is the case with the film adaptation, which I think makes sense, a bit too sickly sweet for me at times. But I think when it works, it really works. And I do think there's some moments in the film, bits of directing in the film, that I think are genuinely genius and really well done. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you're looking for like a fun, wholesome romance, definitely pick this up. But yeah, if you don't want to read all about, you know, the political nature of things at times, and, you know, political campaigns and stuff, maybe just skim through those bits, because that definitely becomes the focus of the book, I think, in opportune times. You know, I feel like the plot that I cared about kind of resolves itself, and then there's another chapter, and I'm like, I don't care about any of this. I don't care about this epilogue, because it's all about the politics and stuff that I'm not interested in. But still, I did overall have a really good time with this. Yeah, so 3.5 stars. I enjoyed this quite a bit, and would give it a recommend if you haven't checked it out. If it intrigues you in any sort of way, I think you will enjoy it. So there's that. And then we come on to my choice for S, which is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is again recommended to me by my friend Amy when I asked people for like suggestions for all the letters, and I hadn't actually heard of it until that recommendation, but I very quickly chose it because I just thought the concept was really cool. So this is set in it's the first of a trilogy, I believe, and this is set in a world where we, the human race has kind of found a way to be immortal. So we don't have to age. We can turn back our aging a bit if we want to. So people are not necessarily sure of how old they are anymore. They've found a cure for any disease and stuff, like diseases, illnesses, cancer and everything. None of that exists anymore. You can't just die from something like that. You have to physically be killed. And obviously that leads to the problem of overpopulation. So they have this system in place where people known as scythes it's their job to glean or kill people at random, to kind of try and control the ever-growing population. So they kind of have like their systems and systems in place for how they might choose what happens. It might just be like, I'm gonna choose this plane full of people, and I'm just gonna kill them all. I'll choose someone who's like a really good swimmer, because sometimes good swimmers get cramp and drown at sea. So I'll kill a swimmer today. It's that kind of deal. And we have two main characters called Citra and Rowan, who are chosen to be apprentices for one of these scythes, and ultimately he will choose one of them to become a scythe, after they spend a year in his company kind of learning what he does and stuff like that. It's gonna go from there, and I assume continue on for another 2 books, and and if it keeps going the way it is going, I definitely will be reading the next 2 books, because I would say I'm on page 141. This is definitely currently on track to be another 5-star, I think, for this project. I am loving this so much. The world building is excellent. I'm loving just... It's a great idea, I think, and I mean, very morbid and sad. But I already feel like Neil Shusterman has this great concept and is fully exploring like every edge of that world, and all these questions you might have, he's answering them. So they're showing some of these situations where, like, should scythes enjoy their job? Are there scythes who kind of push it too far? Are there scythes who are too lenient and don't do a good enough job? Because like every scythe has like a quota of, they have to kill a certain number of people a year, otherwise they will get punished. But also they're not allowed to show bias towards who they kill. So if they think they do, they get punished for it. So if, you know, they kind of suspect that someone is perhaps, you know, leaning towards racism in their selection process for who they kill, they could be, you know, punished for it. So, you know, it's kind of like a necessary evil is what they kind of describe the scythes as in this world. Because, you know, it's not a job that anyone wants to do, but kind of they have to. But maybe some people do enjoy it, and that's an issue in itself. And, you know, Citra and Rowan are very much reluctant. They're reluctantly thrown into this apprenticeship. There's not really much of a choice in the matter. But then I think they both kind of surprise themselves at like, oh God, I actually kind of want to earn this right to be a scythe now. And I think there's sort of a romance forming between them, but also it's probably not going to end well, because only one of them's going to win this competition. So it's not even really a competition. It's just it's a bad situation for everyone involved, basically. But I think the world building so far is fantastic. I'm really enjoying the characters. Like our core main trio of Citra, Rowan, and their scythe. I think his name's Scythe Faraday. I'm really liking the dynamic between the 3 of them. I think the characters themselves aren't like massively standing out to me, but I think they do enough with them that I'm kind of willing to just see if their characters develop a bit more. That might be the one thing that maybe holds it back from being a 5 stars, if I don't like fully connect with the characters more than I currently am. I am enjoying them, but I wouldn't say I'm like, oh, these characters are great. But yeah, I really, really love just the concept of this and how it feels already fully explored, and there's still like another 200 pages left of the book. You know, I'm not even halfway through it yet. So yeah, where this could go to be a trilogy, I'm not quite sure. So I guess we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, you can see there on the cover it says a true successor to the Hunger Games. I think that is absolutely true, 100% true. It definitely gives that sort of vibe. So if you haven't read this and you're a big fan of Hunger Games and you're looking for something to scratch that itch, I think this will absolutely do that. I do think Citra and Rowan, I think, very much give off like Katniss and Peter sort of vibes, even in regards to maybe a potential romance forming there. I mean, I would say Citra's probably a bit more like Katniss than Rowan is like Peter, but you know, it's that sort of vibe, I think. And I think at first I had a very different impression of what Faraday was like, but now we've kind of gotten to know him a bit more and seeing a bit more of his personality peeling away, and he's allowing himself, I think, to show his true personality a bit more to his apprentices. I do kind of see him more as like a Haymitch sort of deal, you know, capable of like empathy and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. I genuinely don't know where this is going, which is really exciting. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but just thought I'd check in with that since I'm a good portion of the way through, so I'll check back in again when I finished it. But I'm really, really enjoying this so far. This has definitely been like a recent standout of the most recent batch of books that I've read for this challenge. So we'll see what happens, and I will check back in when I'm done. Okay, we are back. It's actually been a little while since I finished Scythe. It's been a good couple of weeks now. So I may have other thoughts that I've kind of just forgotten. But yeah, I really, really loved this. I definitely will be checking out the other two in the trilogy and seeing how this wraps up, because I do think it left an interesting enough place. I think you'd probably have questions, but you could leave it with how things end here and be sort of satisfied, but there's definitely like, okay, there's more of a story to tell here for sure. And I want to see more from these characters and this world. So I am excited for that. But yeah, I loved this. You know, I had a really, really good time with it. I'd give it 4.5 stars overall. I think the one thing that was kind of holding me back from giving it the full 5 mainly was that, I mean, spoilers for Scythe. I think I talked about it when I was talking about the book before, but there did seem to be a romance developing between Citra and Rowan, and that does happen. But for me, it felt so rushed, them kind of being in love with each other. It feels like it just suddenly happened. And yeah, I didn't buy into their romance. Like, I like the idea of them being together and getting together, but them getting in, like, as like head over heels as they seem to be straight away. Well, not straight away, but like, I don't know. I feel like they didn't spend enough time together, or we didn't see them spend enough time together to kind of justify how into each other they appear to be, like, and the lengths they go to protect each other. So that I was like, okay. But I think that's something that can be addressed and win me over with the next 2 books, because we're going to, I'm sure, see more of them and their connection. So yeah, I'm excited for that, and I do think we're left in some pretty interesting places. I think there's a lot of really fun surprises in terms of plot and character in this. You know, I was like, oh god, this character's going to be like this kind of character, and I'm going to be annoyed with them forever, and then, whoop, they're gone. I'm like, oh damn, okay. That was a very pleasant surprise that happened to certain characters in this. And then from like the main setup of the story, there's some twists with that I wasn't really expecting. And the world building just throughout continually surprised me with just how fully explored the idea was behind this world that Neil Shusterman set up. So I really enjoyed that. I never could have predicted where Rowan ends up as a character from the start of the book to the end. I think his is the Scythe, that I'm most excited to see in the next book and see where that goes, because yeah, the dynamic between Rowan and Citra is in a very interesting place by the end, and just the story as a whole, I'm like, okay, you son of a bitch, I'm in. So yeah, I don't know when I'm going to get to the other books in the trilogy, but I absolutely do intend on getting them and reading them at some point, because this was great. I definitely one of the standouts in recent memory for the reading challenge for sure. And yeah, so close to being a 5-star read, but yeah, just when I think the thrust of the character drama, I guess, is your investment in this romantic connection, and you don't buy into it, you know, I couldn't give it the 5 stars that maybe it does deserve, but 4.5 still really bloody good, and I highly recommend you check this out if this is something that sounds like it could be for you. It almost certainly would be. I really, really loved this. This was some of the best world building that I've read in a very long time, so definitely big recommend from me to check out Scythe. And so we are on to T, which is going to be the final book that we cover in this video. And my choice for T was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is one of the first books I bought for this challenge. I bought this at the same time I bought Butter. So yeah, it was basically the first book I bought. And I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I did buy it because it had the Great Wave on the cover, and that just intrigued me. I just thought it looked like a cool cover. And I didn't really know much of what it was about. But yeah, essentially there's these two like childhood friends who kind of have a falling out. They don't speak for, I think it's like 6 years. They both sort of end up in, I guess, the video game industry in a way. And they want to collaborate and make a game together. while they're like studying at uni. And I believe it's going to be kind of exploring the next few decades of their friendship and the ups and downs that come with it. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm on page 125. And yeah, it's very readable. I'm really enjoying the characters. And yeah, just a very unexpected story. I wasn't expecting it to delve into like video games as much as it does. You know, it's really nice to get some fun. Like, there's like Metal Gear Solid references in this. And I was playing Metal Gear Solid Delta at the time, which had recently just come out. So that was really funny to have a reference to the game I was playing in here. Yeah, so that's kind of scratching an itch for my, you know, video game nerd brain. And yeah, I do think the main characters are quite interesting in a very unexpected way for them to meet. I don't want to spoil too much on that. But yeah, Sam and Sadie are their names. They both have their own kind of shares of tragic backstories, I guess, and emotional baggage. And we spend a lot of time in both their shoes. I feel like, you know, it's quite equally split, I think, between both their POVs. And there's some other fun kind of characters. Sam's roommate / like best friend. He's quite a fun character who brings a lot of comedy into things. You know, the classic kind of funny best friend sort of trope, I guess, with that. And I generally don't know where this is heading. No clue. But like I said, I'm probably about a quarter of the way through it, if maybe not even that. So who knows what's going to happen with Sam and Sadie and their video game. We do get instances and like glimpses into the future that kind of indicate like, okay, so this is going to happen, or, you know, this at some point their relationship evolves into this or that or the other. So I like kind of the book inferring things about different relationships and events to me, and I can try and guess what's going to happen. I feel like it's going to be quite painful for all involved. I don't know if this friendship's going to have a, you know, a forever, friends forever sort of bond, or if they're going to grow apart and resent each other. Who knows? Well, people who've read this book know, but I currently don't. And yeah, I haven't actually been able to pick it up for a little while. I've just been distracted by the things, but I am really enjoying it. You know, I'm not like glued to the screen. I have to know, you know, it's not like something I've not been able to put down. But it is nice to kind of be in spend time with these characters. They feel very real. I think, yeah, the relationships and the dynamics are really well written. And the dialogue and stuff with the characters, I think, is kind of the thing that's shining through the most to me at the moment with this. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to carrying on. I probably will just check back in when I finished it, unless something drastically changes in terms of my relationship with the book. I don't think there's much point, you know, checking back in until it's done, and then we can wrap up this video, which has taken me a very long time to get through, but that's what happens when you finally get a job, I guess. So yeah, liking this a lot so far. It's kind of a comforting sort of read. It's getting quite cold here now. You know, we're coming into the last little bit of the year. I see myself kind of sitting by the fire reading this kind of book. It's that kind of vibe that I get from it. At least for now. I do feel like they're setting it up to absolutely devastate me. We'll see. And I did... it takes about 100 or so pages for them to explain why the cover is this great wave painting. But once that kind of gets brought into it, it does make sense, and that's actually a very cool choice for the cover. So I do like the payoff of like, oh, that's why it's got that on the front. So that's fun. But yeah, we'll see where this goes, and I will check in when I've done and wrap up this third part of this reading challenge at long last. So whenever that is, I will see you then. Okay, so we are ready to wrap this video up. Today I finished Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Before yesterday, I'd read about that much, so I had a day off work today, so I was like, I need to make the most of this. Just sat back and got on with it today, and I was very impressed with myself, actually, that I had the attention span to just sit and do one thing, which is quite hard for me to do, especially not with like having like something on in the background or whatever, just to focus on one thing. I find very, very hard to do. But I managed to do it today and finish the book and read maybe like 2/3 of it today. Over 300 pages at least I read today. But I think that's testament to how engaging this ended up being, and I really kind of clicked with it today and just got in a flow. It was very readable, it flew by really quickly, and I really enjoyed this. I think I checked in at a certain, I don't know if I checked in with this before I'd started reading it or if I had already started reading some of it. I think I had already read a bit of it when I last checked in. It was over a month ago now, to be frank, so I can't remember. But either way, I really enjoyed this. I'd give it a 4-star overall. Pretty solid 4 stars. I don't think it like blew me away or anything, but I do think going into this not knowing a thing about it and having absolutely no expectations, I think really did work in the book's favour. I think if I had known like the plot elements and how like this was about 2 friends that make video games together, I feel like maybe I would have felt a bit underwhelmed by it, because it's certainly not about that aspect of it, even though there's plenty of that, and my video game nerd heart was very happy throughout this book, because you could tell Gabrielle Zevin knew what references to put in and knew her stuff in regards to that when she was talking about certain games. So I did really enjoy that. That ticked the boxes for me and scratched that itch that I didn't know I had, because I didn't know this book was really about these 2 friends that develop games together. I wouldn't have guessed that from the cover and the title. I think, because I remember talking when I last checked in about how the cover choice of this painting, The Great Wave, how that comes into it and why that eventually makes sense. And the same can be said for the title, because it is a Shakespeare quote. So the way that kind of gets revealed, and probably like the emotional climax of the book, I would say. I feel like the book gets to where it's clearly been wanting to get to for probably maybe 3/4 of the way through, and then the rest is just kind of the come down and the aftermath, and trying to wrap things up after this big event. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. But I do think maybe if I had known a bit more about it going into it, I could see why people might be underwhelmed, because I've read a few reviews after I finished it of people being a bit underwhelmed by it. But it definitely worked in its favour for me going in completely blind. And if you don't know anything about this, but you are interested in it, I would say don't look anything up, just read it and see how you get on with it. So yeah, definitely worked in the book's favour, me not really knowing much about it. All I knew was that there was a lot of hype when it first came out, which is why I wanted to do it for this challenge. And I thought the characters were really well realised, very 3-dimensional, very flawed, and made a lot of mistakes. There were times during this, particularly Sam and Sadie, who are like the 2 main characters. I would argue Marks is kind of also a main character in this. He was a lot more present in it than I thought he was going to be when he's introduced, which is Sam's best friend, who kind of helps sort of fund their endeavour to make games together when they first get started out. And he was definitely my favourite character in this by a long shot, but there were times when I hated Sam, and there were times when I hated Sadie. But you also could kind of empathise with what they were going through, because holy shit, anything that could have possibly happened to this group of people, I think, happened to them. And I think that's one of the things that didn't quite work for me, is that it did feel a bit at times like it wanted to be grounded, but also it was like every week there was like a new thing for them to overcome. It was like reading a soap opera. It was like I was reading EastEnders at times, and they were just throwing storyline after storyline at them. And some of those things that happen to them are very big swings and very dramatic swings that I wouldn't have expected, let's say that. I think, I don't want to spoil too much, but maybe look up some trigger warnings for this, just in case, if that is something that could come up. Almost certainly one of them, I think, would be showing up in here. Quite a few, to be honest. And I really wasn't expecting where some things would be going, especially given like the first half of the book just didn't seemed a bit more low key. But yeah, it takes some swings. It's not going to work for everyone. It mostly worked for me. Again, it did feel a bit like a soap opera, but it was being written like, you need to take this deadly seriously. You know, this is a serious piece of work. So I'm not sure that quite worked. And I think one of the main problem, other than just that in general, is like, you know, you really have to suspend your disbelief that this amount of crazy, messed up shit would happen to just the same 2 or 3 people over the course of their lives. And to put that aside, there were at times as well, I think the writing was a bit like, okay, interesting. And it only happened a couple of times throughout the entire book, and I don't know, to me it came across as maybe Gabrielle Zevin just wrote herself into a bit of a corner and didn't know how to carry on and write the next paragraph. So it's just like, but anyway, back to this. Instead of just like the text flowing, sometimes it would just be like, anyway, let's check back in with, you know, Sadie and see how she's doing. And that only happens like 3 or 4 times in the entire book, so they really stood out as like, that's very weird and very jarring compared to how the rest of the book's written. You know, it changes POVs at times, and you know, so it does shifts like that I think work. But then there are just some sentences like that, it just felt a bit like, did something get cut there? And you've just been like, oh, let's just put one sentence in to try and bridge the gap, and it hasn't quite worked. They really stood out as like it didn't flow. Maybe that's just Gabrielle Zevin's writing style at times when she wants to move things along. But another real positive I had with this was that I thought the pacing was very good. When I got about halfway through, I was like, this is going to be the classic thing where this book's 100 pages too long, because I think books are just in general 100 pages too long nowadays. I would not agree that this was too long. I think maybe at most this was like 50 pages too long. I wouldn't say I needed to cut any more than that out, because I really enjoyed everything I was reading for the most part. They do have one issue with that kind of thing. But yeah, I actually thought pacing-wise it was really good. And they were setting things up as like, okay, well that's going to be like the end of the book then, that's going to happen, and we're going to be building up to that event. And then like 2 pages later, it's like, and now we're at this wedding that we only just set up. And it's like, oh wow. So I thought, you know, it's just going to be treading water and nothing's going to be really happening, and it's just padding out the book before this event happens. But no, it really kind of races through all that. I mean, this book takes place over a couple of decades, and I think for the most part she handles that, you know, progression of time really well, which is why some of those moments where she kind of just skips to a different place or a different time really felt a bit like awkwardly done. But again, it was only a couple of times throughout the book that happened, so I can kind of overlook it for the most part. And I guess another thing is like there's a lot of miscommunication. If the miscommunication trope between characters gets on your nerves, I don't think this is going to be a book for you. Because so much of Sam and Sadie's issues would have been sorted out if they just bloody talked to each other. And I do think I understand their reasons for not doing it, and they are given reasons for why they're not kind of expressing how they feel to each other, in regards to like their problems and stuff, not their, you know, it's not like a romantic thing or anything. But it's still frustrating because it's just a trope you get all the time. It's just like, just tell them how you're feeling, tell them why you're frustrated with them, instead of letting this kind of sit. But in another way that's kind of relatable, and I actually quite enjoyed how messy these characters were. I enjoyed the fact that there were moments where I thought Sam was entirely unreasonable and unlikable, and times Sadie was entirely unreasonable and unlikable. And then Marx is just an absolute king, who I really loved. So, you know, I liked that. I kind of liked the messiness of it. But yeah, I can see why that might not be for everyone. So, you know, personal taste, I guess. And I felt like Gabrielle Zevin at least justified enough why some of this miscommunication was happening. And sometimes it's just one of those things. It's like, okay, it's not necessarily, you know, the plot of the story isn't that these characters aren't really communicating with each other. I think certain things would still have happened, and there still is a plot outside of that. So I think that's why it didn't bother me as much. It's not like the plot is that these two aren't talking to each other and there's no good reason for it. There are good reasons for it, but that also isn't like the thing that's happening. That's not the point. That's not the story. That's just a section of it. So I could deal with that. But yeah, I thought the characters were really well realised. You do kind of root for them. I thought a lot of the backstories we got for the different characters throughout the novel, I thought worked pretty well. If anything, maybe a bit too many POVs or a bit too many characters in there. That kind of felt a bit unnecessary by the end. Because we spend a significant amount of time near the start with Sadie's sister. And we kind of really spend a bit of time in her head. And she gets mentioned again nearer the end of the book, and I'm like, oh, I completely forgot Sadie had a sister. Maybe that comes from me reading that bit of the book like a month ago, and I've just been picking away at the book ever since. But I feel like the sister was really a means to an end, just to get Sam and Sadie to meet, and you'll understand how that all happens if you read it. But yeah, there's a few moments like that, and we kind of switch POVs to other minor characters very, very briefly. I'm like, did we really need to do that? I don't know. But again, you can overlook that things. The only real thing in terms of like, did this need to be here? And even then, it's not, did it need to be here? It's like, did it need to be this long? Was my main issue. And I think the only thing where I found the pacing ground to a halt is, I think it's maybe the penultimate chapter of the book, or the penultimate section of the book. It's like, and again, it didn't bother me as much as it might with some people because I like video games, but it kind of has like a section that's like describing a character in a video game, kind of going about their existence in this video game. And it does take a turn near the end and kind of bleeds into real life again in the near end of that section. But it's like 25-30 pages, and I got what the point of it was and what Gabrielle Zone was trying to do with that section about 4 pages in. I was like, okay, I see. And then it just keeps going and going and going, and like the revelation is like, see, it's actually this. And I was like, yeah, I knew this 16 pages ago. I don't think we needed it to be quite this long. I just found it a bit tedious and a bit boring, having this in-universe like game plot being explained to me. But again, maybe other people would really like being immersed in this video game world. But for me, that chapter was about 15-20 pages, a bit too long. But that was the only moment that I was like, you really should have maybe changed that pacing-wise. Everything else I thought was fine. But yeah, that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I really enjoyed this. 4 stars. If you are looking for a story about friendship and the trials and tribulations of that, if you don't mind messy characters, if you like very niche video gamey references, I'll definitely give it a go and see what you think. Yeah, I think it's got a pretty positive response overall from what I've seen for reviews for it. I definitely kind of fall into the, I think the majority of people really liked this, and I really liked it as well. So yeah, I'm glad we're ending the video on a book that I very much enjoyed. So with that, we can wrap up part 3 of this A to Z reading challenge. That's another 7 books in the can, 20 books down, 6 to go. I think this is actually the first video for this challenge where there hasn't been a book that was kind of a flop. There was definitely some that I'm like, I've kind of already forgotten about you, but I wouldn't say there are any books in here that I couldn't see recommending to anyone. Even the ones that maybe I didn't like as much, I could see myself recommending them to certain people who I think would really enjoy them. Whereas in previous videos we had like Galapagos, which I was like, and I was quite let down by like Jurassic Park and Life of Pi and stuff. I wouldn't say I feel that way about any of these. I felt a bit maybe let down, but I still could recommend them, I think, to some people. The big hits, I would say for sure, are Ninth House by Lee Bardugo. I really loved that. I can't wait to read the second one. And I think she's teased some news about the 3rd book in that series soon, so I'm excited for that. Scythe by Neil Shusterman was also another really, really good one, so, kind of quite dark fantasy-esque, dark academia sort of things have been big hits for me this time around. And I'd also put Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow into that pile. Not quite the same level, because I think these are both 4.5s. But yeah, I still very much enjoyed this as well. And this is not the kind of book that I would normally pick up. You know, I'm normally quite big into, like, I need some fantasy elements and stuff in there. But still, very pleasantly surprised by just how much I enjoyed this. Very solid enjoyment from Red, White and Royal Blue and Peter Pan. I had fun with those. One of Us is Lying and Queen of the Tiles, they're definitely, I guess, if I had to call them disappointments, they would be my disappointments. Just because, you know, I let myself get a bit too hyped for this one based on one of the booktubers that I follow. And I was just a bit underwhelmed by it. And I didn't like the main character. I thought she was quite unlikable and didn't have much redeeming qualities to her, so I couldn't really get invested in that. And I thought the resolution to the actual murder mystery was pretty... So, what can you do? One of Us is Lying. Genuinely can't remember anything about this, really. I think I remember the resolution to, like, the murder. I couldn't tell you a single character's name in this. Granted, it has been, I think, a couple of months at this point. But yeah, you know, it's the start to a series. I'm not interested in continuing on with it, but it was fine. It's good for what it is. I think it's just a bit maybe dated at this point. You could definitely tell it was written when it was written. So, you know, again, I think if you just want a very quick, breezy murder mystery, I could still see myself recommending these two, but I'm definitely going to be unhauling these two when this challenge is done, that's for sure. So, you know, they're definitely the bottom end of the scale this time around, but there were elements I enjoyed, but those two are like the 3 stars, so I didn't give anything less than a 3-star in this video, which can't be said for some of my previous ones, so what can you do? And I think I did work it out. The average rating for the books, star-wise, for this video was 3.7 stars out of 5, so that's pretty good. And overall, so adding up my, you know, the average for the 20 books that I've read so far is also 3.7, which it was this point at the end of the previous video. So, you know, I guess I'm just rating a lot of the books very similar sort of scores. But hopefully, in the final part, we're going to find some unexpected bangers, because a lot of these are books I just hadn't heard of, the last 6 that I've picked. I don't currently have my choice for you physically. It's actually, as I'm recording this, it's the 9th of October today. As I'm recording this, that book is coming tomorrow, so I will talk about that then. I will say it's a novella, so it's like 150 pages. It's not going to take me too long to get through, so I don't know if I will like check in until I've already just read it, because it's quite short. We'll see what happens, but yeah. We'll be finishing off my A to Z reading challenge in the next video, which is very exciting. And yeah, I've picked a lot of books that, for the most part, I just hadn't heard of. I think there was like 4 out of the 6 I hadn't heard of until I was researching for this challenge. So, yeah, I'm quite excited to go into a lot of this last stretch of books without any preconceived notions of what it's about or whether or not I think I might enjoy them. I've kind of just taken a lot of leaps of faith for most of these, so who knows when that will be coming. Hopefully fairly soon. I'm hoping to finish this challenge before the end of the year. We'll see what happens with that, so stay tuned for the 4th and final part of this challenge whenever it's coming, hopefully in the next couple of months. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this continuing adventure that I've gone on. We're nearly there now. You know, the light is at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of the books that I read in this video. You know, do you agree, do you disagree with any of my opinions on them? Are there any that you're interested in reading now? What do you think my choices are for the last 6 letters? I mean, I have revealed some of them in my other videos, so you'll have to just kind of seek those videos out if you want spoilers, but yeah, let me know your thoughts on everything. I hope you are doing well and looking after yourselves, and I will see you when I see you.